Hi everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the case of Suzanne Morphew, 49 years old, and had went missing from her Maysville home on Mother's Day back in 2020. Her remains have been discovered on September 22nd of 2023. Literally feels like yesterday, as we are in early October, so just a few weeks back. And the weird thing was, it was discovered in an unrelated search just by chance. Guys, it's been 3.5 years that she's been missing, that people have been looking for her. So there's been a discovery. Authorities notified her husband, Barry Morphew, and his two daughters, Macy and Mallory, regarding his wife and their mother. At this time, there's been no arrests made, but it's really interesting because in the past, there had been an arrest made. It was her husband, Barry. But charges had been dropped without prejudice. So some people are wondering, what now? Is Barry going to be charged with the crime? Where do we go from here? I'm Chelsea J. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is my channel, Crime Light. I welcome you back if you're a returning member. If you're new here, welcome. I can be found on Spotify if you're looking for a podcast to cruise through your day. But for the most part, I love and enjoy being here with you, my YouTube fam, on the channel. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And if you end up loving the video, please be sure to give it a like. So the mother of two, Suzanne Morphew, had been discovered on September 22nd of 2023. She was discovered about 50 miles away from her home that she had shared with her two daughters and her husband in Maysville in Chaffee County, west of Salida, out in Colorado. Now, she had not been seen since Mother's Day. Boom. She just vanished. And I'm going to be taking from different sources of news and articles, but I'm also going to be reading off of the 130-page affidavit that kind of talks a little bit about the light of their marriage between Barry and Suzanne, and we're just going to analyze through sort of what's going on here, because if you're anything like me, you're confused and you're lost, and you're on the absolute edge of your seat. Okay. Suzanne Renee Mormon was born April 30th, 1971. She had one sister and two brothers, and the siblings were said to be very tight. Suzanne was a product of her own mother as far as the best things you could get from a parent. Suzanne was sophisticated and had looks, a great voice. It was said she even sang in her choir in high school. Suzanne radiated everything that is expressed to be wholesome in a woman, such as having the presence of making you feel safe, and she didn't gossip, which ensured security. And actually looking at the photo here, you can see that Suzanne was just a very natural being. She was a very kind person. She was said that what you see was what you get, that she was beautiful inside and out. And you can pretty much tell just kind of looking at her eyes. Suzanne has this glow about her where she's just this natural, feminine, beautiful mother and wife. And through the softness of her eyes, I can personally sense that she must have had a very gentle spirit. It was said that what's happened to Suzanne is something that you would never, ever guess. You would never see this coming, because she was so loved and so appreciated by so many. In 1988, Suzanne met the love of her life, Barry Lee Morphew. Barry has a whole history of being a phenomenal player of baseball, but due to an injury, he was not able to progress into that area of his life. But both Barry and Suzanne were said to be of Christian faith. And so for them, they were equally yoked and united under God in marriage. And everyone said they were like the couple. Look at this couple. I mean, absolutely beautiful. Idealistically, when we think of an all-American good-looking couple, this is kind of, in my opinion, what we would imagine it to be. Now, both of these people were said to be extremely driven people in their life. Suzanne was a school teacher, and Barry had started a business, a landscaping business of his own called BLM for Barry Lee Morphew Landscaping back in 2004 when they both lived out in Indiana. The couple would end up being parents to two stunning young women named Mallory and Macy. And besides being really good parents and good to the people in their community, they were said to be good to one another. Their marriage was the marriage. Everybody looked up to it. You could see through the photos, through their lifestyle, that they just had a good thing, seemingly. Both people were just incredible with big hearts, so it was said. Barry would take care of himself. He would take these retreats where he would go hunting. He was said to be the man's man. I had read in different articles or seen different interviews where it was said that Barry was the kind of guy that would drive his truck and he was like pumping iron while he was doing it. He was just one of those guys. He was not afraid to get his hands dirty. And so he was said to be an avid hunter for one of his hobbies, something that he took very, very seriously for himself as a man. And in the meantime, he had met his match because Suzanne was so gentle and just such a generous and kind person. She had started a nonprofit foundation. You know, she was just really there for those who were in need. And again, just as well, so was her husband Barry, because he had been through the fight of Suzanne beating cancer twice in her life. Suzanne beat cancer twice, known to be Hodgkin's lymphoma. She had it once before they had left for Colorado when she was back in Indiana, and it was said that Barry stayed by her side very intently. He was really there for her. He was carrying her when she couldn't walk. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that you read, I don't know, in the Bible or in some kind of Hallmark poetry, but he was that guy. Like, can you imagine this big man's man just scooping you up when you're too weak to walk on your own? He's like, I'll be your feet. I'll be your arms. I'll be your strength. This was what was said of Barry. His love for his wife was literally said to be undying. It was said that she beat it the first time and then they got married. And honestly, yeah, I would totally think about marrying somebody that was there for me on that level too, because they were just perfect for one another. Unfortunately, right around the time that they were looking to move to Colorado, this is when she was diagnosed for a second time with the same cancer. It had returned. The Morphew family moved from Indiana to central Colorado in the spring of 2018 after the Morphew's oldest daughter moved to Colorado for college and the younger daughter was still in high school. So while there, this is where Suzanne continued her chemotherapy treatment and that she started getting involved very heavily with a local church. She was a volunteer and she would cook these different meals and she would show up and she would help these teenagers out that needed a shoulder to cry on, someone to talk to. She was an angel sent from Indiana out there to Colorado because honestly, who couldn't use a good Suzanne growing up? Like, I could have totally used a really solid mom figure in my childhood. And I think even the kids with the best parents can always use an outside source for some love and support. And that was said of Suzanne. She was that person while she was beating her own trials and tribulations in her life. All right, so blessed on blessed on blessed, like a $1.5 million upgraded house out there in the mountains where it's peaceful, beating cancer for a second time, a good family, good faith, strong alleged marriage. I mean, nothing's perfect, but if that existed, this would be said of this family. But look, this case is in for a major plot twist right about now. It's not just the death of Angel Suzanne that leaves us rattled and shaken. For example, she's been gone for 3.5 years. She has been gone and in a better place all this time. And so it's more than just the fact that they've discovered that she has died and has been dead for a while. What grabs us, in my belief, and puts us through hell for this woman and the family is the mystery to the crime. Somebody knows something about the death of Suzanne. Something is gonna happen with this case. I think at this point, we all just want to know the same thing. Did Barry do it or not? We're all curious. That's the big question of the content today. So we're going to get into the story and figure out what the hell is going on, what's happened, and try to wrap our mind around everything that we thought we understood up until now. Let's go back in time. May 9th of 2020. Macy and Mallory are out of town, allegedly on a camping trip or a road trip of some sort out in Utah. Barry and his wife Suzanne are left Mother's Day weekend alone. The night before, it was said that Barry and Suzanne had an amazing marital time together. I mean, they just enjoyed the intimacy of their privacy, the peace out in the mountains, the trees. I mean, this is the kind of place that you would go to for a vacation and a getaway. But for them, this was life as they knew it. And so they were absorbing all of their hard work and their blessings, probably especially because Suzanne is sitting there beating cancer for a second time. I mean, it just, again, magic, right? It looks like the absolute dream. It was said that they grilled steaks together, they made love together, and then they went to bed at some point that night together. And so the next day is Sunday, and it was said that they typically went to church because of the Christian faith that they were involved in. But on this particular day, Barry had a side job that he was said to go to, that he needed to go out of town for work in this particular Sunday. And as a churchgoer, I totally get it. Sometimes things are going to happen, you know, where you're not able to make church. So there was nothing off about that. It was said that Barry set his alarm for 4:30 in the morning, and then he was up and at 'em on the road by 5 a.m. that next morning on Mother's Day, May 10th of 2020. Now, Barry's job is said to be about 3 hours out of town. When Barry went to leave that morning, it was said that he saw his wife, witnessed his wife, which does a little bit change later, but he said he saw her in the bed sleeping at 5 a.m. when he went to leave. Right here, the story will a little bit change because he gets interrogated later and questioned about this. And then he says, you know what, I really didn't see her because it was really early. So I heard her, briefly breathing, snoring is what he would go on to say later. Either way, he indicates that, yeah, she was physically in the bed when I went to leave that morning on Mother's Day. So far, we know on Mother's Day that Barry said that she was alive in the home that they shared together, where it was just the two of them. And the next thing that we know is that the last person that had allegedly seen her was her husband, Barry. Well, later in the day, when he started going out of town and got his day going, he ended up texting his wife because, after all, it's Mother's Day. And he says, hey, happy Mother's Day. And he said, I didn't get a reply. Then Macy and Mallory honored their Mother's Day, and they said, hey, Mom, happy Mother's Day. And they were still out of town, and they also got no reply. And so in the affidavit, it blanks out who reported to the neighbors that they were concerned. I am wondering if it was the daughters. I've heard it said both ways. It was either Barry or it was one of the daughters, Macy or Mallory. But somebody told the neighbor that they were not getting a response from their mother because it had been most of the day. And she was, we'll come to find out, one of those people that was on her phone quite a lot. And so this was really unusual. So at some point, someone in the family says, can you please go check on Suzanne, mom, wife, whatever. And the neighbor went over and checked on Suzanne, but Suzanne was not there. Now, it was said that the neighbor called Barry and said, you know what, she is not here. And Barry said, well, she's an avid bike rider, and you might want to check on her bike and see if she went out for a ride. At any rate, Suzanne ended up literally being missing. The neighbor ended up reporting this. It wasn't Barry, but it was the neighbor. And so by 5:45 p.m. that evening, she was considered a missing person. They were on it. They had a team of professional people come on out to the property and start looking into this. And then Barry was said to have left and been on his way back. And the daughters were said to be in the home by the time he returned. And as hopeful as everyone was, there was no sign of Suzanne. Mother's Day, she had been home alone, everybody's home but her. This just didn't make sense. Suzanne's bike was discovered over a hill next to the roadside, as if this was an accident. Well, Suzanne's bike ended up being discovered over a hill next to the road up the way from the home. And the thing of it was the bike was in pretty good condition, and had she ridden her bike off that road, number one, the chances of that being probable weren't very high because, again, she was said to be an avid bike rider. And so the other thing was, if she did that, she would have been definitely close by and she would have been hurt. I mean, the bike would have been in worse condition. She would have been injured. Well, then, yeah, it gets worse. And this kind of concludes itself that this was not a biking accident because the bike's condition is fine. About a mile away, there comes to be a helmet, which is kind of tossed into the field. And then everybody thought that was kind of weird. So it started looking like somebody might have driven a different direction and tossed the helmet out the window. And then it gets far more strange. Her sunglasses and hydration pack that she would have taken biking with her that day, because it was like 70 degrees, so to speak, when the day kind of turned into the day from the early crisp morning. So she would have had those things with her if she was biking, and they were not with her. They were actually in her car. So if anything, nothing about this was making sense. It started to look like she didn't even go on a bike ride. To be honest, it looked like she had been possibly abducted. Well, one of the things that Barry did correctly was immediately he started putting out a reward. He started putting out information about his wife, and eventually he would go on the news and he would beg and plead, but in a very professional way. It looked like he was hurting to get his wife back.
No questions asked. However much they want, I will do whatever it takes to get you back. Honey, I love you, and I want you back so bad. Oh, Suzanne, if anyone is out there that can hear this, that has you, please, we'll do whatever it takes to bring you back. We love you, we miss you, your girls need you.
So in game, there ended up being a tip line, a press release, and a reward system for someone who knew anything to please come forward and share. All right, well, this part. Someone in this marriage has me on the edge of my seat because, plot twist, Suzanne was having an affair. And we're going to talk more about that in the discovery in a minute. But she started seeing a guy named Jeff at some point in the marriage to Barry. What the hell? Who's Jeff? And why? All right, well, Jeff, come to find out, was someone that Suzanne had gone to high school with, that she had a brief fling with back in the day. And it took police 6 months to figure this out. The affair was on lock and just under the rug. Like nobody saw this common. And so it took quite a while to trace all of the missing pieces and put this together to create a big picture of who Jeff was. So yeah, high school fling back in the day. He is in Michigan. He is married. He has children and a wife. So he too is kind of doing the sin thing with Suzanne. What was really weird at first was that Jeff kept like really quiet. I mean, it went viral. It was national headlines. It hit media attention like so fast. And so there's no way that he wouldn't have known that his mistress or his lover was missing. And instead of coming forward and cooperating like all these other people do that we read about, like calling in like, oh man, I don't want to be involved in this. It's me. Hi, I have something to say. He decided, you know what, she is gone and I'm married and I could lose everything. He wasn't even ready when she was alive and well to leave his family for this relationship. It was something they talked about a lot, but they both were not in a position. Their kids were going through high school, and there were just different reasons why these two people decided, for their own sake, and in a weird way, the sake of each other and the family members in each other's family, that they weren't going to do that. They weren't going to mess with that, but they always dreamed about a someday, is what it was said in the affidavit. And so he wasn't ready to come out and lose everything. Now she's gone, and so he decides, I'm just going to shut this down and back out of this and just mind my own business and just watch from afar. So he shut down his LinkedIn, his social media accounts, his WhatsApp, which is something they used when they communicated with each other. He ended up having an accident, I guess, with the phone that he was using. There wasn't a whole lot of evidence when he was tracked down. But when he was approached, he was cleared. He was cooperative. They swabbed him for DNA and he passed with flying colors. And then also he had an alibi for that weekend when she was said to have gone missing. So he was rock solid and he was ruled out. Within a month or so of Barry moving Suzanne and their daughter from Indiana to Colorado in April of 2018, Suzanne sent a Facebook message saying, "Howdy, stranger," to her high school friend, Jeff. Suzanne and Jeff, who resides in Michigan, began communicating regularly through 2018 and eventually began meeting each other in 2019. Suzanne traveled to meet him in New Orleans, Indianapolis, Dallas, Michigan, and Florida, where they eventually had consensual sex. By September of 2019, Barry took clear steps to determine if Suzanne was having an affair by stalking her at her own residence in Salida, Colorado, as witnessed by Suzanne's closest friend, Sheila Oliver. In January of 2019, Barry took Suzanne's phone from her when they were at a resort in Mexico while she was talking to Jeff, but Barry was unable to determine Jeff's identity. On May 8th of 2020, Suzanne started keeping notes in a section of her phone that Barry accused her of having a boyfriend on May 6th in 2020. On May 9th of 2020, Suzanne's last proof of life occurred at 2 p.m., the hour within messaging Jeff with a selfie while Barry returned to the residence. And this is also Mother's Day weekend. Suzanne did not respond to Jeff's return messages at 2:44 p.m. and at 2:46 p.m. that same time, Barry admitted to running around their property with a gun, placing his phone on airplane mode at 2:47 p.m. Now, had Barry known of Jeff? Yes, the answer is yes, he did know of Jeff from back in the day. Here's a little history between Barry and Jeff. Jeff seemed like he was pretty ashamed of having the affair with Suzanne, as he admitted what he did was disgraceful. So he was really struggling to come out like on top, the nice innocent guy, because he knew this looked bad. But in the summer after Jeff's first year at college in Indiana, he attended a party with some friends at Suzanne's house. Barry and Suzanne were a couple, but Barry was not at the party. Jeff said he and Suzanne kind of sort of hooked up, but not really. And then eventually Barry and Jeff would have a run-in at the golf course where Jeff was playing golf and Barry worked. Well, Barry ended up finding out about Jeff and Suzanne sort of hooking up at the party. And then Barry ended up approaching Jeff and saying, "You're going to lose your job. You're going to lose everything." Jeff was able to de-escalate the situation and talk Barry off the ledge. And that was the last time that Barry and Jeff ever had conversation. Jeff said he didn't talk to Suzanne until 2018 when she approached him. I'd tell her I carried a torch for her all that time. Jeff and Suzanne used FaceTime to communicate in 2018. Not a good thing going on here. It looked like Barry was the dream guy. You know, he had it all and then some. And then there's kind of this probably what he considers dweebish guy that is literally a knockoff of Barry. He is not the man's man that Barry is. You know, he's got his hair. Jeff looks like he's balding. I mean, he just doesn't understand, if I'm to be fair to Barry. Like, you know, she's all hung up on this guy. She cheated on me with this guy. And then, you know, for all this time, he's held it together for his wife. I mean, moved her in these really nice houses, provided very nice things. You know, he had kind of peaked in his life as a man. It looked that way. And so I can't imagine how shitty that would be for somebody to cheat on you when you are literally the best version of yourself. And we're going to get to that right now, however. Okay, so now we know about this. We know that she's been unfaithful. The authorities have stumbled upon a little spy pen that I'm going to get to in just a second, where they figured out the spy pen was a device for recording, and that's how they caught on to Suzanne's affair. The biggest problem with this is the fact that Barry told authorities that him and his wife had a good thing. I mean, the way that we believed when we started this content was that they had a good thing. It looked like they had the best thing, an excellent thing, amazing, close to perfect. I mean, really, we thought that they had it all going on and then some, but come to find out they didn't. So it kind of seemed to me like out the gate that Barry wanted people to believe that he had a lot of different amazing things going for him, and his marriage being the trophy marriage. If you ask me, that's what I think. So he kept to that. I mean, that was just for whatever reason, something he wasn't willing to lose, even when pressed by authorities. And so he was lying. He was saying that his marriage was great, but you know, we're about to find out it was really just not. And by lying, Barry really just started building his own case against himself, because he, come to find out, is going to lie about a lot of different things. And the truth is, right here, if we just stopped right here. And we believed everything that we had seen and known to be true. And Barry's going with it like my marriage was great. And that was all behind me with the Jeff guy. I didn't know about this. And everything's swell. If your wife is really missing and everything is really swell, then why would you lie? Because this is what he's going to do. He's going to lie a lot. Now, according to Suzanne's sister, Barry was not the kind of guy that he portrayed himself to be through photos and the life he wanted you to think he had. Barry was actually said to be very assertive, dominating, and not a very kind man. He was not quite all that nice to his wife. On a couple texts here we see on March 25th of 2020, Suzanne is talking to her friend Sheila, and she says taking care of herself in a stressful marriage is hard. And she says, I had a very tough talk yesterday, and somebody, she's saying, told her divorce Barry. Sheila, what does he want? Have you talked any more about splitting? Suzanne, he threatens but never comes out, and I wanted it today. He threatens, but I've never come out and said I wanted it today. He thinks I'm holding on until one of the daughters graduates. He probably thinks I'm not strong enough to do it given finances. She mentioned so-and-so even mentioned a restraining order. I'm sick. I have had conversations like that with my 16-year-old. Please remember this part, because in the end, Macy and Mallory actually start telling authorities that they didn't know of any marital tension between their parents. So Sheila goes on to say he's nuts. Suzanne says, it's Jekyll and Hyde again. Pretty much told him I can't be healthy and stay in this. Sheila says, what did he say? Suzanne, he threatens to come home and pack. Ugh. Suzanne goes on, he won't speak of divorce, begging for another chance. I am so torn, but in my heart, I know who he is. During one of the interviews, Sheila actually says, hi, I gave my friend the spy pen, to which that's how authorities would end up finding out about the affair. Because even though Sheila gave Suzanne a pin that's supposed to record conversations, that ended up backfiring. They were trying to catch Barry being verbally aggressive or maybe even having an affair of his own. But really, when the authorities found the pen in the bedroom after Suzanne went missing, they plugged it on in and they were able to hear that she was talking to Jeff very romantically. And then hence, that's how they ended up finding Jeff. But Sheila is the one that said, I gave her that pen because I was worried for her safety with her husband. Now, it goes on to furthermore say that in 2019, Sheila became very concerned and had known that during a trip Suzanne took to Michigan, that Barry was acting really crazy because he was paranoid that Suzanne was seeing somebody. And this part actually really confused me, because the truth is that Suzanne really was seeing somebody, and she was in Michigan, and that was the time that Jeff was in Michigan as well. In 2019, she would have already been into her affair. And so it's hard for me when I hear that she was doing things behind her husband's back and using fear as a basis to not be able to pack her things and leave her husband. That's hard, because if you've been in that situation where you've been cheated on, you do act out of character. It's not a good feeling to be paranoid all the time. You just kind of demand answers. It's not something that's out of the norm for a human to be kind of aggressive and assertive on their point. Like, I need answers. I don't deserve to be treated this way. And so I don't know how far that went between Barry and Suzanne, but the truth is, yeah, she was being unfaithful during 2019. And that's not to victim shame, but we do have to face all facts here, because Barry is going to be put on the line for her murder. And so we do need to understand clearly what part, honestly, that both people were playing in the marriage before Suzanne would go missing. But on the other hand, if she's having an affair, which I never condone, but if she is, and she's been going through a lot of aggressive, crappy abuse by Barry, through Barry, her man on the side isn't wanting to settle down yet in his life, it probably did leave her in a place of confusion. I'm just analyzing here. Being a human to human, like, what would you do in that situation kind of thing? I'm not sure what her motive was to approach Jeff, of all people, because we all know now that Jeff really pissed Barry off back in the day. So of all people, you had to do it. Now, Melinda is Suzanne's sister, And Melinda ended up being interviewed after her sister went missing. So what ended up happening was Melinda said for the previous 6 months, Suzanne had been texting Melinda and told her things were getting tense between her and Barry. Melinda advised that Suzanne told her that she had come to realize what a narcissist her husband Barry was and that she had come to terms with his narcissistic ways. Melinda described Barry as one who lives a double life, a liar, an adulterer, a bully, one that has to have control, cunning, fools people a lot, loves money, and treats his wife and daughters as trophies. She said they lived a phony life together and that they would often put on a front as if they were happy together. This is when Suzanne says pretty infamous words by now. This is something that's come out on the internet that she says about Barry. She says it's hard dealing with the harsh abrasiveness and having to show respect. He's always been like this. I'm not going to say the word, but you can read. Emotionally and physically, there is so much. I went through a period of acceptance and I feel more angry. I have anger for what I've allowed. May 8th, which is a day or two before Suzanne was ever last heard of or seen, she said that she had come to terms with him being physically and emotionally abusive. She had not discussed those things with Suzanne and was surprised to see Suzanne, taking it that far and saying this just the way that she said it. When Melinda found out on May 11th that Suzanne was missing, she said, damn it, damn it, damn it, to herself because she was certain that Barry had killed her. Hey, that's a big deal when your sister automatically goes, damn it. When she assumes you're dead before the news comes out that you really are. That's a big deal. So that said a lot, in my opinion, about really kind of the guy that Barry was said to be. And I mean, man, when you start mixing the word narcissist with a human and you're fully believing in the real definition, then yeah, that's going to open an entire new can of worms, but entirely a new world of understanding that you're roped into something called a cycle that if you don't get out, you will be in for the rest of your life unless that person comes to terms with themselves and they go seek medical help. And even at that, it's going to be a long road of mental and psychological healing and recovery if the person who is a narcissist is willing. If they are not, which most of them won't, they don't because they've lived their lives that way. That's the thing about narcissism. A lot of people don't think they need the help. They don't think they're wrong. That's the number one rule about being a narcissist. So it sounds like Suzanne sort of uncovered like the truth about her husband, Barry. And regarding Jeff, just to briefly touch on that, Jeff said that he witnessed a lot of turmoil within his lover and that she was very transparent and open. And on occasion, he had seen for himself Barry's behavior because they would be together and then Barry would call her, through the phone when she was with Jeff. And you know what? He just saw how distressed she was. And he was able to see, like very close to her, that Barry was very manipulative. Jeff said that he held money over her head all the time and that he would tell her things like, you know what? I got you this nice place. I've set you up. I've hooked you up with a nice house. The life that you have. I mean, he was trapping her and psychologically telling her, you can't have these things without me. And so she was codependent. She was codependent on the security in the marriage. And so it was really hard, Jeff said, to watch her go through this, especially in knowing that she was healing from round 2 of cancer. Barry didn't ever want his wife Suzanne to leave him, but at the same time, it was more what appeared to be for control's sake because he wanted to keep that good front. Remember, the affidavit said that his daughters and his wife were meant to be looked at like trophies for him, like, holding on to his arms. He's the man's man. He's got the good marriage, the whole thing going for him. That was what Jeff said he witnessed and that he was able to see was distressing Suzanne. I'm also not going to completely violate the guy, Barry, but it was said that Suzanne was very unhappy in bed. She said he was so mean to her, Barry, that she couldn't even enjoy his body. There were just so many issues amongst the two of them. All right, so let's visit the crime just a bit. Now that we know a little bit more about the Barry and Suzanne situation, this makes sense about the experience that Barry said they had together on May 9th, if it even happened. If they had stakes and made love and all the things, then we know now that was not something that was enjoyable the way that we would picture it to be for a married couple. That this is not something that Suzanne liked. It's even said in the affidavit that she admitted, like, I'm not gonna make my husband go hungry for sex with me, but it's not my thing. Not with him. I want to talk about if this possibly even happened at all, the stakes and all the things, because there were some lies that would come out and there was some activity going on before Barry would end up seeing his wife. And so far what we know is that he was really intense. He was like the kind of guy that was trying to check her phone. He was onto her. He, felt like something was going on. He had taken her phone in Mexico. He was trying to determine who she was talking to. He was paranoid when she was in Michigan. So I think he had developed a lifestyle of, using his hunter senses. He was an avid hunter. So he kind of, in this weird way, started emotionally coming for his wife, kind of hunting down whatever double life he thought she was living. So yeah, May 9th. What was she doing before her husband came home that day? From LinkedIn, Jeff and Suzanne sent 59 communications to each other Saturday, May 9th, with the last outgoing from Suzanne occurring at 2:11 p.m. when she messaged, "I'm on WhatsApp." Jeff sent a response message at 2:39 p.m. and at 2:46 p.m. and 2:47 p.m. he said that Suzanne did not answer. He also sent messages on May 10th and May 11th that went unanswered, and this was very unusual because they were in a very tight-knit affair with one another. The affair was so tight, records would indicate that 738 calls were made between Jeff and Suzanne's numbers between October 2018 and December 2019. That's a lot of calls to be making behind your husband's back or your wife's back. Suzanne called Jeff 74 times under international calls from the Cayman Islands between January 14th through the 18th. That's a lot of calling. My God, that's 4 days and 74 times. Whew. On December 18th, 2020, agents contacted Jeff by phone and showed him some of the results of the LinkedIn messaging and photos between him and Suzanne on May 9th of 2020, which was the last time that she was ever seen alive. On May 9th of 2020, Suzanne sent a message at 11:42 and said, "Guess who's alone again?" Jeff told agents that the message meant they were free to talk, and Suzanne was not surprised that Barry left her alone at home, which I think says a lot about her feelings toward her husband. I kind of sense some resentment there, like, oh, I'm not surprised he's gone again, feeling neglected maybe. And then when he's around, she's saying he's mean. So, it just sounds like she's very disconnected from Barry at this time. So anyway, what ended up happening that we feel that we might know is that they sexted. The WhatsApp was supposed to be an indicator that they were stripping down and, getting sexy with one another. That's when he asked her, Jeff at some point said, "Do you want to get naked?" And she said, "I'm going to switch over to WhatsApp." And then at 2:11, she says, "I'm on WA," referring to her starting the WhatsApp so they could share a video with each other. From referencing the LinkedIn messages before and after, Jeff does not believe they used WhatsApp that time or later that day. But at 2:03 p.m. earlier, just a little earlier that day, she had texted him on LinkedIn this picture of herself. And then what we do know is that about 2:30, we know that Barry rolled in. Okay, so she was supposed to be getting on WhatsApp with Jeff about like 15 or 20 minutes before her husband would roll in. And at 2:46 p.m., Jeff replies, "Hey, your weather looks great." And then May 10th, he ended up texting her, "Hey, happy Mother's Day," but she never responded. All right, so at 2:26 p.m., Barry's like, done, headed back. Nobody really knows if Suzanne ever got that message or if she was like, ignoring it for Jeff. She doesn't respond to it. Then he asked her, "Did you leave?" And she didn't respond to that either. Then he got home. Now, the weird thing after he arrived home, besides his cell phone going into airplane mode within 15 or 20 minutes, was the fact that his cell phone was pinging all over the property of the house. Barry ended up being questioned later by authorities on the matter of why was your cell phone pinging all over the house, like behind the house, just all over the place. And he said, let me think about that. Probably it's because I was shooting chipmunks. Well, that ended up somewhat incriminating him as well, because there were no signs of chipmunks being shot at around the property. So authorities were a little sketched out about that one. The thing that really got me about Barry, this man was the kind of man that set himself up to have anything that he could ever want. Really, he made a lot of money. He was a very driven man's man. I mean, it was said that he held this above Suzanne for a long time. And so with a guy that could have anything that he wants, that kind of money, it was also said he came from wealth. Why would Barry go around doing multiple different interviews and talking to people after his wife's disappearance without a lawyer present? People thought that was really off. Not even strange, just off. Because unfortunately, this does a little bit, in my opinion only, sort of point to that claim by Suzanne's sister about narcissism. Because narcissists, if this be the case, they think they're above it. You know, they don't really think that they need anything or anyone. They are very entitled kind of people. I'm not gonna sit here and diagnose the guy, but that was just seemingly weird. Now, speaking of being the kind of person that would be above it, remember that people closest to the couple and knew of Suzanne's emotional barrier against her husband and her reasoning for it. Barry didn't want a divorce, and it would come to be more known that it was for reputation's sake. Well, there was a recovered text message that had originally been deleted out of Barry's phone. Barry's Verizon phone was searched by FBI examiner Jim Stevens, who found an image that Barry likely swiped the message off his screen, and the swiped image was inadvertently saved. This message was not recovered separately in Suzanne's phone or Barry's phone. The image appears to be a message from Suzanne to Barry. The date was May 6, 2020 at 10:13 a.m. And this would have been 4 days before she would be declared missing. And it says, from Suzanne to Barry, I am done. I could care less what you're up to and have been for years. We just need to figure this out civilly. The next thing we know, Barry was asked to voluntarily submit a polygraph examination, to which he declined, and his reasoning was he didn't want to do anything that was not 100% accurate. He also said they weren't admissible in court. Well, okay, fine. We know that his wife was cheating. We know the girls were out of the house, and we know that he is cooperating up to a certain degree. Because Barry's phone had been on airplane mode, to which later he states, oh, I guess that could have happened. Maybe. I didn't really want to be disturbed when I was spending time with my wife. That's what he would say later. But for now, there's really no indication on why it's off on airplane mode. And so what they do know is that there was quite a bit of time, hours of time, that they couldn't trace where he was after he was seen or pinged to be running all over the premises of the home. So what they did was they did a digital vehicle forensic, where they're able to go into the system of his vehicle and trace activity. And so Barry was supposedly supposed to have made love to his wife and went to bed at some point with her around to be 8 p.m. Well, on the evidence of Barry's truck, it had been put into reverse and moved over 90 feet toward their home around 9:30 p.m. Okay, so the timeline is no longer adding up to Barry's story, which is where it was alleged that maybe this is where Barry was loading the body. He originally said his alarm had been set for 4:30 a.m. and then he left at 5 a.m. Well, unfortunately, his story doesn't ring true here either, because the truck doors were seen to be opening and closing at 3:30 a.m. that next morning on Mother's Day the 10th. And then 3:49 a.m. through the time of 8:10 a.m. It is so unfortunate to report that the computer system could not be read. So this is where the truck kind of goes off the grid. Why? Oh, that's so frustrating. They lose 4 hours of evidence, like really important time, that he would have been driving or movement within the truck. Well, so they're using evidence to the best that they can, and they do have to somewhat start taking Barry's word for it. I mean, he's got the story, they're seeking answers, so they start, trying to figure this all out, pin this story of the missing person together. And so when they lose track of the truck hours, the 4 hours that the truck could not detect any type of motion, that's when they have to realize, like, you know what, we just have to get like his side of the story at this point. And so they did. I mean, they ended up collecting information as much as they could from Barry. But then later there would roll out to be some discrepancies, which again is such a big no-no. Like, why would you lie in the first place, let alone to authorities at all, if you don't have anything to hide? Something that got said to me growing up is that when you lie, you have to lie to cover the lie. And now you got 2 lies to cover. And then there's a 3rd lie. And then eventually there's going to be what's called holes in the story, because the lying is designed to cover something, some kind of first hole. But then you're digging more holes as you go through trying to cover one hole. And so really you're burying yourself if you think about it. You're just not creating something that makes sense. As long as you always tell the truth, just stick with honesty out the gate, there's nothing to cover. There really isn't. And so it's so strange that Barry was lying. And now it just gets twisted and turned around and just all deformed and messed up, because the storyline isn't making sense, even though he's learning as they go about more evidence, and he's getting questioned about things, and he's trying to make his story squeeze into fitting what police think that they know about his missing wife. So I feel like right now he's more focused on trying to bring clarity to the police and giving them what they want to hear, so he doesn't look guilty, over just being honest. If it's bad, dry luck, be honest about that. I just have bad luck, instead of, well, let me make that make sense for you. And then something else along the way isn't going to make sense because you're over here trying to cover the patch of lies that you're building. This is so frustrating at this point. So let's get into some of the discrepancies with Barry. There was the deer discrepancy that he started with. It said that Barry had detoured off of his original route to work that morning because he's an avid hunter and he saw some elk on the sides of the road or in the crossing. But police said that deer don't shed their horns in May, and it would have been pitch black at 5 a.m. that day because Barry was interested in hunting and collecting their horns. Well, on this route, this detour that he took, that was where the helmet of his wife was found tossed out the window. So that kind of more incriminated him, and it was a lie. And then the next morning by 8:10 in the morning, that was when the GPS came back on, and that was also when they could trace where his phone was. And this is where we're led to the discrepancies and the strange behavior behind the trash runs. Barry was repeatedly caught stopping as he made his way to Broomfield, where his job was to dispose of trash, including McDonald's at a dumpster outside a men's warehouse, where he also purchased a new outfit. He claimed that he had been tidying up his truck when asked about why he was dumping trash in various places. But when he arrived back at the Morphew home on May 10th, police said his truck was still filled with clutter and bits of trash, and there were photos to prove that. So that just doesn't make any sense at all. That feels like something I would ask my 10-year-old daughter about lying to me on cleaning her room or dumping the trash, when clearly the evidence is really just right there. Why would you need to go around town and dump garbage? That's a really strange thing to do. What Barry ended up saying was that he liked to save costs on trash by finding different dumpsters where you could freely get away with dumping a garbage piece or two. But with a guy that has that kind of money, I don't understand why you need to save money on trash runs. And also, if you're tidying up the clutter, see the lie here, the story of the holes where he's trying to squeeze in what he thinks that they need to hear. Well, I was just doing this. And so, yeah, that puts me in a bad position where you're asking me why I'm dumping garbage at a McDonald's truck stop, yeah, I can answer for that. And it's for this. But then that just creates a whole new story, a whole new hole in the story where now it doesn't make sense because your truck is a fucking mess. And what's up with changing your clothes? Why would you need to change your clothes? And again, I'm going to get to an example of what dealing with this kind of guy was like for law enforcement. Gosh, I hate to refer to old stories here, but a lot like the Scott Peterson, like being given that really manipulative runaround when he would be asked things, he was doing that really strange, similar thing that, remember Mama Sharon, Lacey Peterson's mom said Scott did? She would ask him something about her daughter missing, and she was given that same demeanor, like not quite an answer, and then you're sorry you asked, because what happens is you're already trying to get clarity, and then the person just puts you in a position to be a lot more confused than you were before you even asked. That was what working with Barry was like. And yet it was so confusing. He's acting very cooperative. Like there's all these signs that he's not talking with a lawyer. So he's not arming himself for protection under any circumstances. I guess I feel like you almost never see somebody with money needing to declutter their truck and run around town to do it to save a buck. How about this? It's not even odd, it's off. It's just off. It's an off thing to do. It ain't right. And that's what the authorities were sensing. It's not a crime to dump garbage in a McDonald's trash can, but it's not really something a man with money and an agenda to get to work should really be doing. Stopping and getting an outfit and dumping in a variety of places. It's just weird. Then Barry checks into the Holiday Inn hotel room in town from 12:42 to 6:03 p.m. So let's get into that frustration factor of Barry, which, like, I'm sorry, but very much reminded me of Scott Peterson, what we analyze with that right now, just so you can get an idea, because this is weird. Like, there's now a new gap of time, and just the way that he handled his entire investigation questionnaire was just so weird. One of the things that they ended up asking was, why was there one plate for the two of you on the night of the 9th? Okay, so remember, they made love, they grilled steaks. There was one plate that had been used for dinner that had been recovered in the dishwasher. And so Barry said, oh, well, I guess that I hand washed my plate. Again, you got money, you got probably the fanciest dishwasher in existence in your $1.5 million house. Why does a man like you need to be doing trash runs at McDonald's? Why does a man like you need to be hand washing his plate when you got a dishwasher to do it for you? Well, okay, so there was clothes, I guess, that he had discarded, and he just kind of blew it off like, well, that's just me on occasion. Like I, have old boots or old clothes that must have been in my truck that needed to be tossed too. He makes nothing of a something, if that makes sense. When your wife is missing, it's not just nothing to do what you're doing. And I just feel like he didn't come out to say that. Like, listen, I know why you're asking. I totally get how this looks. It wasn't like that. I felt like he was ping-ponging the answers back. Like the ball is in his court and then he pings it back. Like, well, here's your answer. Boom, you're up. And then they throw something else and then he just, throws it back. Well, Barry had showered allegedly at the house before he left. And then when he went to the hotel, before he even did any work at all, he showered in the hotel room. And when asked about showering, he said, showers relax me. Again, like it's not a crime to shower twice, but all you did was jump in your truck and make a few dump runs. I mean, what's the point in changing your clothes and, dumping things? It was really strange. When the CBI questioned Barry about changing shirts twice after getting to his hotel, Barry stated, I change shirts all the time. And then he went to follow up by further saying, I don't even recall changing shirts that day. So kind of taking the point off the importance of the matter. I mean, this guy is a smart guy. He runs his own landscaping business. He owns a very expensive house. You can't be dumb and do both, right? So we know he's smart, but he's kind of playing dumb here, like making the matter about, well, I like to shower. I like to change shirts. So what? I throw garbage away. I guess I hand wash my plate. So anyway, later that evening, that's when he got the call that his wife was missing. And then he ended up telling his colleagues that he needed to leave on a family emergency, which, great. You know, that's probably the one thing he did correctly that day that didn't look that mysterious at all, was he went on the family emergency. You know what? Hey guys, I gotta go home. The next thing that really disturbed authorities and looked really weird was the fact that Barry had a job in Broomfield on May 11th, which was after Mother's Day, and he was due to collect an employee named Morgan Gentile at 5:30 p.m. that evening on Mother's Day, May 10th. But instead, Barry had to suddenly go on May 10th, arriving in Broomfield early that morning. So that was really weird. And according to Morgan and another coworker by the name of Jeff Puckett, Barry left his hotel room to Jeff, and it was said that his hotel room was smelling really toxic of chemicals like chlorine, and that the room was littered with wet towels. So that's just strange as hell, because it's a brand new room, and I don't know why you would feel the need to go in there and bleach a bunch of stuff or utilize any cleaning products in there, but that's what he was said to have possibly done. Now, later that does get debunked, as there is somebody at the hotel that works, again, sheer luck, I would suppose, that says, oh no, that room just smells like that, or it could smell like that, because the way the room was placed in the hotel was above where chlorine allegedly was. So anyway, Barry got home, and his wife isn't there, but his girls are. So after that, he goes national, and he ends up pleading for the safe return of Suzanne, his wife. By May 14th of 2020, the reward was offered and doubled to $200,000 in search for Suzanne Morphew. September 25th, 2020, a candlelight vigil was planned for Suzanne Morphew at Riverside Park in Salida. Teams of people continued hard to search for Suzanne, who was still considered missing. Nearly a year after Suzanne went missing, Barry was finally arrested. The district attorney, Linda Stanley, charged Barry with murder in the disappearance of his missing wife. She didn't reveal what evidence she had, but she promised us, the public, that there was enough to convict him. After a year of preliminary hearings and pretrial court appearances, Barry's trial was set to start on April of 2022. Prosecutors dropped the charges against him and said they did not have a case without a testimony of expert witnesses the judge ruled to exclude from the trial. Okay, now. Check this out. This is gonna say so much about narcissism if this is who this guy is. Watch this. May 14th of 2021, Barry was charged for submitting a ballot for Suzanne in the November presidential election. He was charged with forgery of a public record and election mail ballot offense. Remember, his wife is missing. She is literally missing. She has not turned up dead, none of that. He turns in a ballot for his wife, and they're like, dude, she's supposed to be missing, so they turned it over, and then he got looked at for that. And you know what he said? I just wanted Trump to win. I just wanted to give Trump another vote. Make it make sense, because I'm not understanding. How do you use your missing partner's ballot for presidency for what you want? That's what you wanted. As a person, he made it about himself right there. That is the stuff I am talking about. That really doesn't have much of my support in Barry's corner, because wow, that is so distasteful is what it is. I thought he was a smart man. The man opens his mouth and he does things that just make him look dumber as time goes on. Let's take a look at this evidence part here. This is another thing that just really had me on the edge of my seat about this case. By January 28th of 2022, the judge on the case released some evidence in the murder case, including pictures of Barry's hands with scratch marks that prosecutors said may have been from Suzanne trying to defend herself. The defense said the scratches came from tree branches while he was looking for his wife, but I don't think that looks like tree branches to me. And of course, without a body with fingernails and DNA evidence underneath, that is just an assumption. I mean, they can't do anything with that. But they're two perfectly lined marks, like two fingers could have done that. So I completely understand where that theory would have come from. The other thing is prosecutors said they believed Barry used a tranquilizer dart, and they found a needle sheath in the dryer at the Morphews' home when they were investigating the home. So investigators said it fits a needle that's used to inject serum in a dart. Barry said he did not know how it got there. Now, what's weird is that Barry ended up bragging about his ability and knowledge on how to use a tranquilizer gun. He said, I do it when I shoot deer. And he comes out and he says, I know this is going to be distasteful and it's a violation of the law because I'm not supposed to do it. But when I see deer with antlers cross my yard, I go for them. And here is a picture of his prizes that he's bragged and boasted to authorities that he knew he was violating the law by shooting all these prize deers. And then he tells them, you know what, you're going to find these all over the property actually, because that's what I do. I do use this for that purpose, even though they weren't able to recover an actual weapon to do so. So what's weird is that could have just leaned into his favor and he didn't keep quiet about it. That's actually where he came out and was a little too honest, but in a very narcissistic, boastful way. Like, you know what, I'm breaking the law, but check it out. Look at all my prized possessions up here. Look at my skill set. Look what I can do. Weird. Then authorities ended up finding a bullet by the bed. It was testified that a .22 caliber round was found on the floor of Suzanne Morphew's bedroom next to her side of the bed. And Barry does own a .22 caliber pistol, to which he says he used to shoot chipmunks. And remember, the chipmunks theory was debunked, really. They didn't believe it. And so, again, that kind of leans further into the favor of Barry looking guilty because there's really no reason for it if chipmunks aren't going to be out and around. Then in the home, I think this speaks a lot of volume to assault. They had a damaged door. A really nice house, this quiet, peaceful couple, and there's a damaged door. There were cracks in the door of the master suite at the Morphew home where Suzanne and Barry slept. The former owners were approached and had clarified there had been no damage to the door when he sold the Morphews the home. According to police experience, the door had been battered down, and then there was debris in the fireplace. Police said they found the remnants of a piece of lacquered wood in a fireplace at the Morphew home, despite a stack of firewood nearby. Also found in the fireplace were the remains of a burned document and books. Now, police had been told Suzanne always kept a Bible and her journal by the bed, and so they were able to recover the Bible, but they were unfortunately not able to find her journal. And that's weird. Why not? Why would her journal go missing when she does? By April 19th of 2022, Barry's trial was set to begin on April 28th of 2022, but Fremont County District Judge Ramsey Lama granted a motion filed by prosecutors that asked to dismiss the murder case against Barry. District Attorney Linda Stanley filed a motion that asked Lama to dismiss the case without prejudice, meaning charges could be filed at a later date. And this is the best thing. I like this, DA. This is the best thing that they could have done. Because obviously a missing person with all the lies, the holes in the story, and no body, this needs to be looked at. There needs to be closure. Someone knows something. And I said that at the beginning of the video. Well, a lot of people think and thought back then that it's Barry. Now, it infuriates me a little bit that his kind of little bit narcissistic lawyer came out and was just really puffed her chest up and had really a statement to give. And here was her statement. They absolutely dismissed this case at this point because they knew they were going to lose this trial, said Barry's defense attorney, Iris, and Mr. Morphew was going to be acquitted and exonerated. Which let the record show that Mr. Morphew is not exonerated by any means, and I do believe if it had faced a jury, I don't think that they would have let him off, personally. But here's some key points that leaned into Barry's favor. The cap that was in the dryer said that it didn't have his DNA on it. Now, I don't know much about something like that, I fully admit. I mean, if it went through the washing machine and then the dryer, I mean, would there still be DNA on that? I don't know. But it didn't have his DNA, and so it detached him from that piece of evidence. The Holiday Inn, when they mentioned that his room was set above chlorine, that really, unfortunately, debunked a huge amount of potential evidence where the towels smelled really strongly like chlorine or bleach. And that debunked entirely his involvement of being in the room, maybe cleaning some kind of evidence up. And then a really big key part of this case is the evidence that was found in Suzanne's car. So Suzanne's car held evidence of DNA from someone else that had allegedly SA'd like 3 other people. And so it was an identified person that wasn't Barry. So that's so strange to me. Like how that would be. How would that be possible? But I mean, then I have my own conspiracy. She was so helpful in the church and maybe somebody was trying to turn their life around. She gave a ride. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say why that would have been in her vehicle. I would have thought that maybe they would have taken a whole lot more other than touching a part of her vehicle and just leaving their evidence there. So I don't know. Was it planted? It's hard to say. Well, May in 2023, after Barry was released, which this was just a couple months ago, he hits back. He files a really big lawsuit asking for millions in damages because he was in jail. He hasn't been able to work. He hadn't been able to be there for his girls. He wasn't able to help search or continue the road for recovery and healing for his missing wife. And then it was said that his reputation, and I believe so, was very much tarnished in Colorado from all of this media coverage and publicity, which, you know, I know that they seem like they targeted the guy, but he was coming out on his own and he was coming up with a bunch of mixed stories. And so I said it in the beginning of the video that I felt like he was incriminating himself before they would make him out to look the way that he was. But they called it great economic losses for Barry and his family because of the home and the finances and the stability that he had before they were trying to convict him of the crime that they're saying he did not do. And by September 27th of 2023, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation announced that it had found Suzanne's remains, and it was said that Barry was with his daughters and they were all struggling with immense shock and grief after learning that their mother and wife, whom they deeply love, was found deceased. They had faith that their wife and mom would walk back into their lives again, and the news is simply heartbreaking. Now, I just want to go back really fast because now they're coming out publicly and saying, you know what, Barry's a victim. He's been innocent of this all along, as well as his 2 daughters. But regarding Barry and his attitude and demeanor of being able to come out publicly and talk about this with no lawyer, here's what I think. I think he thought he had it until he didn't, because he was out there telling all kind of stories about what he was going through and creating holes and making this harder than it needed to be by just not cooperating, even though he said he was. And then when he got caught, that was when he hired a very high, powerful attorney to represent him. This guy had a lot of money, so I don't know why he refrained from getting himself an attorney. And I wanted to talk a little on the attitude and the behavior of Barry really quick in closing. I understand that paranoid, enraged feeling of being two-timed by someone who really should be in your corner. It's happened to me. I can't even tell you how many times in my life that someone that I gave a job to, a roof over their head, my love and support to, had turned on me. I mean, not everybody is said to be your friend. And that was a quote that one of my favorite YouTubers actually said when I started watching YouTube a few years ago. And it's sad to say that usually the people closest to you are the ones that will betray you first and the hardest. I feel really sorry for the guy in a way that his wife was doing this. And this isn't to victim shame, and this isn't to be sexist, but what I'm about to say is the truth, and it does matter because of the state of the case is in. So Suzanne shouldn't have cheated on her husband. That's just the truth of it. And at the same time, Barry was a really proud kind of guy. Like, he prided himself on being the man and the leader of that home. It doesn't really matter how he put his family on a pedestal and cleaned them and shined them and was proud of them. I mean, I know that's not necessarily right, But I can also understand in a large way that he was just very proud of all the things that he had. And I know that's the part where, well, until it made him look good. Well, but still, having your wife cheat on you with somebody else and keeping you on your toes, paranoid about it, especially if it's somebody from far in the past, that must have drove him freaking crazy. And I really appreciate that Barry stuck around for his wife through the cancer. I appreciate that about him. I know it couldn't have been easy. I mean, he had his own story. He was a victim to watching his wife suffer for a while and twice over again. So there are things that I really had come to admire about Barry. I really love that Barry is there for his daughters. I don't know what's happened to the world we live in today, but there are quite a few men that are lazier, they're less driven, they don't show up for their kids, they don't visit, they don't help with child support. I mean, Barry was giving it all and then more. He wasn't just putting a roof over their head, he was putting the roof, like the kingdom. He was setting his family up for beauty. Some of those pictures that his family and him were placed in, especially his wife, those are sunsets in the back that you only see on a calendar, or maybe one vacation you're lucky enough to afford to take or be blessed to take once in your whole lifetime. There were numerous places this man financially supported his family to go and live a very comfortable, good life. And I could see somebody being upset when that feels like it's getting taken advantage of. You know, I work hard and it's not for nothing. I have loved you. I have been there by your side when you're sick. I am raising our girls. We will jump states to support our college student in Colorado. And I'm going to put you up in the best house that I can find, in the most peaceful place for your healing. I mean, I could understand if that's really the attitude he had. If he was feeling under attack, like everything that he's doing is not enough, I can understand. So I had admiration for Barry on a certain level. But now I want to tell you something. This is really important right here, so listen. I had it for him until I imagined the price tag that would come with being with someone like Barry is alleged to be like. Beauty can turn to ugly really fast. All the gifts and the blessings that you entertain for your family, that you provide as a leader, that is literally all for nothing if all that's being done with it is utilizing it to imprison your loved ones and use it as weapons to say, I do this for you, you owe me. Sadly, Suzanne isn't alive to speak on the matter. Yeah, she's not here to speak on the matter, but I mean, when she was alive, she was making it really clear, and privately at that, so that's the worst part. Through hidden notes of different occasions, he would snap on her or stalk her or belittle her and make her feel like less than. He wasn't using these things to make her feel blessed and secure. He was actually making her what sounded like feel very insecure and not blessed, but tortured and trapped and imprisoned. And somehow she got a hold of the name narcissist. And once you discover that, if you think you're with one of those people and you stumble upon that definition and start your studies on that, totally different life. I mean, everything is seen through a much different lens after that. And I do believe that's why she came out and said that he was using finances to imprison her in the marriage, because he would tell her things, so she said when she was alive, like, you know, you can't do this without me. And I'm the provider here. Know your place. I imagine it is terrifying to be dating somebody that has his own family, finances, and own life on the side, and then trying to escape, being trapped in this mindset, being shouted at, stalked, demeaned the whole time, and being like, where do I go? Like, what would I do? I mean, she was still in treatment for round 2 of her cancer. So I do feel her struggle on like, should I stay or should I go? I mean, I am this far in my marriage, in my life with this guy. I don't know what to do. I'm not happy, and I just don't know. It's really sad, the whole cancer thing, because if he was like this to her, then it wasn't healing for her during her cancer treatments. Not for round 1, maybe, and definitely it doesn't sound like for round 2. And so it's hard when you're of age and your girls are grown to wonder what direction you're going to take. Like, should I just spend the rest of my life living like this? Should I just adjust? Should I just go to bed and wake up next to him tomorrow and hope it's a better day? Or should I leave him and spend what's little of my life or the rest of my long life, depending on what the future held for her? Should I leave and go find my happiness because I have spent so much of my life at the service of others, but him the most? It sounded like something inside of her shook her and woke her and said, you know what, you deserve to be loved. So it's like one of two ways. He was either mean and hiding it, or he was pretty genuine and she was misunderstanding it and going through her own thing. Something that really bothered me about the marriage with Barry and his wife is that he, in the end, it was like he said she was on pills and that she was the aggressor, and that there was on occasion that he had to defend himself and that she was an alcoholic. I hate when people do that to victims. I can't stand it when they're not here to defend themselves and somebody comes along later and they go, well, now that I can speak my mind, and kind of pretend they were the victim in the circumstance. I don't like that. And I see that this really man's man kind of just did that. And I hated that. So as of recently, she's been found. She was discovered when they were looking for another person by the name of Edna Quintana, to which may God bless her and her family. And I hope that they're able to find her, hopefully alive and well, but in general, that they're able to discover her. But I'm so grateful that we were able to find Suzanne Morphew. That is so great for her family. The fact that she's gone forever is really sad closure, but it's a piece to the puzzle. It's kind of that, well, my loved one isn't just out there somewhere and we'll never know. It's like, now we do know, but we need to just find out now, like how this happened. So the last thought about Barry. What does Barry have to say about all of this? Let's take a look.
I love my girls and I love my wife, and I just want her to be found.
Boy, he sure lost his backbone. He does look more rough than tough these days, huh? To be honest with you, if Barry is innocent, then this whole situation has definitely taken years off this poor guy's life. And the tension and the stress is something that not anything in the world could ever replace. I mean, it's just never coming back. What a traumatizing experience if he's for real innocent. Like, I can't, poor guy. If he's innocent, this sucks. So unjust if he's innocent. If he is the man that his wife died saying that he was, then I don't see the video and the picture as poor guy. I see it as somebody that refuses to lose control. I would have to say if he comes out guilty, then we would come to find out that this video and picture of him gripping his daughters is used to have control over the vulnerability of two people in his life that still believe in him, that still buy into it, that still think he's innocent.
Did you have anything to do with the disappearance of your wife?
Absolutely not. It's very hurtful to lose your reputation and your integrity.
Enforcement, the DAs believed that they had their guy, and they believe that there's a mountain of evidence against you. There's just not Suzanne's body.
They're wrong. They've got tunnel vision, and they looked at one person, and they've got too much pride to say they're wrong and look somewhere else.
These charges were dropped without prejudice, which means if authorities feel like there's more evidence, they could charge you again. Do you live with fear of that?
Well, I was innocent the first time they arrested me, so I'm sure it's possible. But I don't have anything to worry about. I've done nothing wrong. And I know that she was going through chemotherapy for the last couple of years before her disappearance, and I know she was going through some hard things and made some bad decisions.
What kind of bad decisions?
She was really having trouble with the chemotherapy and the drug.
When you found out that Suzanne was having an affair, what was your first thought?
My heart was broke. My heart was broken. I didn't believe it.
Really difficult, especially because of the lack of closure we have.
And he looks sad. which is something I hadn't really seen. Even in the pleading video earlier, he was pleading, but he wasn't like distressed and just heartbroken the way that he looked now. If that's the case, then he's really pulling the poor me victim card hardcore. He would be utilizing this lawsuit that he's got going on to penalize the right people for only doing their job. And just because he would sit here and say, well, you know, oh, it's heartbreaking that she had an affair and start crying, well, that would be seen and used as a tool as well if he's guilty. It's also smart because then it says, I don't care about the affair. I just miss her. And it puts away from attention on himself or any other man, and it puts back to his wife. Like, let's just find the real killer here. That's if he's guilty. If he's guilty, I can see it now. I can see the signs now. If he's innocent, then this sucks. And those are real signs, and that's real trauma, and those are real tears, and he is really defeated. So the biggest question here is, what do you think? What I think is that I'm not going to diagnose and I'm not going to blame this guy right now. No blame for him. But I think he has a lot more evidence leaning against him at this time. And because it's been over 3 years that her body was discovered, it was said that they had to find her DNA through her cancer port. It's just been too long. So I don't know. There's like a lot of questions about this. What was she wearing? What does she look like now? What can we collect from her? We're on pins and needles here, aren't we? So what do you guys think? Just remember that he's not found guilty at this time. But case might pick back up and he might be found guilty. I don't know which way the wind's gonna blow. I don't, but he's got a lot of evidence against him. His lies, for starters. Okay, guys, so that so far is some of the update on the Suzanne Morphew case with her husband, Barry Morphew. Please don't forget to like the video and definitely subscribe. And I'm going to leave the link to the 130-page affidavit so you guys can research yourself. I highly suggest that you do. Very interesting. And it discloses a lot of information about Barry. And yeah, most of it's against him, if I'm to be honest. So brace yourselves for that. All right, guys, well, take good care. I'm Chelsea J. I will see you next week for another awesome video. Crime Light out.